Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Lean In space of Step Into Your Rhythm. Tonight, we're here for a real, authentic conversation. So, if you tap in, please know that the only reason you're tapping into this space is so that we can win. This is a call to action. This is not a call for us to have another conversation about anything that's not leading us to somewhere. There's a place called somewhere that's going to transcend this atmosphere that we've been operating and living in. And so on today, I have with me Danielle, the game changer, right? We got Cortland, the coach of no other, right? And then we got PJ, lead they. PJ is the one that steps into the space when we talk about Black Lives Matter. Cortland, that's the coach like no other. Like I said, Cortland has been bringing our youth out of the storms and allowing them to see that their authentic identity is more important than them getting caught up in systems, more important than them becoming complacent. And Danielle, y'all know she always operates in a level where she's going to strategically make sure that we understand the policy and we understand the procedure of the land. And as you all know, I don't mind speaking up or stepping out. And it's time that change happens here in Topeka, Kansas. And so today we're in a lean in space. And we're going to talk a little. I'm going to have Danielle just break up and break down a little bit of some of the policy that we've been living and we've been dealing with, some of these numbers, right, of impact, of bodies falling right here in Topeka, Kansas. I'm tired of it. Anybody else tired of it on this call? Come on, use the voices. I'm tired of it. Come on.
Tired of it.
Yes,
Y'all know.
110%.
So Danielle, give us these numbers that we're dealing with right now, currently in our current situation here in our city.
Well, what's really concerning is that just within the last few months, we've seen a large uptick. Not that there wasn't already concerning practices that we've been fighting for forever, right? These systemic problems are just that. They've been policies and procedures that have been created to suppress and to disenfranchise. So we know that piece. But what we've heard over and over and over again within our city as to why we're not moving to make different changes is we don't want to bring national problems here. And all of us on this call, and many of you have probably heard that over and over again. And they use that narrative constantly to say, we don't need to create problems. We don't need to bring national problems here to Topeka. Topeka is a positive place where we all feel super united and this isn't a problem. And it's not so. Right. We came forward in 2020 and demanded that changes be made. Some of them mitigating changes. We insisted that some wording and policies and procedures that were within contracts and within policies of the department for the Topeka Police Department were changed to help prevent tragedies from occurring, to create accountability within our city. And it was denied. The city dragged their feet for 18 months. And in the end, just this summer, just in July, came forward in their last couple city council meetings of July to present their recommendations that were in fact not recommendations at all. Most of them consisted of things that were already happening or had been done previously. There was no real change. And since then, we have seen a huge increase in police officers being involved in shootings, discharging their firearms in public places. We are now at a situation where we have had 2 Black men killed by police in encounters where white men on at least 3 occasions since the summer have been taken into custody without firearms being discharged. That is scary. That is not a situation that anyone should feel comfortable with, including the city and the police department. It is time that an external audit from the Department of Justice occurs so that we can figure out what these policies, procedures, what's really happening that is causing officers to not feel equipped in managing situations where Black men who are in distress are not being treated the same way as white men who, quite frankly, in a couple of the cases were actively threatening. So we need answers.
Thank you so much, Danielle. So where I'm at right now, as I was talking to both Cortland and I was talking to PJ on today, and me and Danielle have been consistently having a conversation. My first question up is, where do we go from here? Where do we go from here? We've allowed ourselves, a gentleman I sat with earlier today told me this story about, and what he was doing was painting a picture for me. He said, do you know where the O'Reilly's is? Right there off 17th Street. Do you know where that's at? Right? And I was like, yeah, I know where it's at. He said, do you know that building was built? The building was built as a IGA. It was a grocery store 30 years ago. A Black male built a grocery store so that the community could have access to something that they were needing. He said, and the community did not support having this in the neighborhood. And so I'm saying to you, and what he was doing was painting a picture to me, is why are we not willing to step forward in this community to fight for change? What is it that we're needing right now to bring us to a point where we break loose from those shackles to say that we can do it by ourselves? One of y'all talk to me.
I mean, I feel like there's a number of reasons. And again, what I'm going to say here today is just based on my experience and my experience in my in our.
Where you at, Corley?
If I was doing I think I was registering voters. I spoke with when I was doing that have kind of, first of all, they don't have a whole lot of trust for political process. You know, the feedback I was getting was like, yeah, no match, should I do this? Which I understand. Let's say.
Okay. So I'm a Cortland.
You know what I mean now?
Okay. PJ, can you talk? Cortland, I'm gonna give you a moment to get your sound together because we want to hear from you because I couldn't hear you.
Definitely. Am I coming through okay?
Yes, sir. You're clear.
When I sit with your question, I think it's important to establish where here is as far as where do we go from here. And as Cortland was trying to say, everything that comes out of my mouth is definitely my personal opinion based off of my experience. And I feel like here right now today is a day and time where it's just, I mean, flat out, it's not safe to call the police. Not on people of color. It's just not safe because the end results are always tragic. Someone's going to jail, or it's not what the person who initially called for help actually wanted or actually needed. And it's just, I mean, the community, not the community, but the city speaks for itself in their actions. I've seen a lot of posts, oh, Topeka is the safest city to live in and all these things that they're trying to push out and promote. But at the same time, at the end of the day, numbers don't lie, and their numbers are actually aggressively going up to the point where I feel like this uptick has happened at the same time, all these other folks within the city have taken these new places and these new roles, which puts them, I mean, somebody's dictating this. They have morning meetings, et cetera, et cetera. And I feel like there's been more of an emphasis on them getting home safe and them taking care of themselves and each other than it is to protect and serve the community, especially when it comes to the people of color. And I'm only basing that off of their actions. I don't know if they're just and I hate to say this as a stereotype, but if they're afraid of black people or what, but it seems like black folks are getting different results statistically, nationally, and now locally.
And that's the thing, like we have to understand that when we look at our local numbers and our national numbers, when we look at the percentage, the local number is high per capita. Is higher than the national number. And so we have to look at why is that continuing? One part is continuing because we don't want to do the work because we're only seeing through a limited lens. And the limited lens is comparable to a city or a state that may be bigger than us. We're comparing the numbers in comparison to them. But in reality, if we're always comparing, are we really moving the niche? Are we really moving? If I'm comparing, because I should not be comparing my success to no one else's success. If one black man falls, one black woman falls, there's an issue because the numbers are limited within the city. The numbers are limited within the state, and the children that are coming from the bodies of those black men and women are seeing that their life expectancy is low as well.
Yeah, if we look, Dr. Platt.
Because if daddy could be shot down, if mom could be dragged. What you say?
Oh, no, you broke up, and I'm so sorry. I thought you had stopped talking. You cut out for a minute. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh, no, it is good. I was ready for you to jump in. I'm like, shut up, come on.
You know, when we talk about racism as a public health crisis, we know that that's not just a national thing to say. This is the data we have right here in Topeka and Shawnee County. And we know that Topeka, Shawnee County's population is 10.5% Black and 15.3% Latinx, but are involved in 46% of the recorded incidences of officer use of force.
I think.
Yeah, go ahead, Corlin.
I think therein lies a part of the answer to the question that you posed first, Regina, when saying why aren't folks engaged. I kind of felt like that's what you were asking. Why is it so difficult? And then PJ followed up with, law enforcement, are they scared of us because we're Black? What is that? But also looking at the effect that law enforcement has had on our community, and then asking people to show up in spaces where, let's be honest, it's a lot different, showing up for Black folks and people of color to rally. Those optics are completely different than showing up for other things that we see happening right now, like the movement for reproductive rights. I think there is a certain element of fear, and that fear could be from physical harm, like the police have already been in my neighborhood causing issues for decades. And now I want to show up where they're going to be at watching. Is there going to be some physical harm? And then also, you're kind of conditioned to, when you have encounters with law enforcement, it doesn't go so well. So, you got a young brother who wants to show up, but he's like, man, I think I got a warrant. And what is that going to look like? And that is a form of fear, but I also think that that's known. And I also think that the powers that be kind of play on that fear. So I think that is a part of the issue, the over policing of Black and brown bodies. I think put some people in a position, even myself. There were times a couple of years ago where we would rally, we would protest and putting together security procedures and things to make sure that everybody goes back home. I remember PJ wouldn't leave until everybody was gone. So that fear is real. It's valid, and I think that is part of it.
I just, as you were speaking, my oldest daughter was carrying my grandson during this period of time. and I need us to really understand like the side effects, right? We're talking about her daughter's father being shot in the back of his head right here in Topeka. We're talking about her uncle being shot right here in Topeka. We're talking about friends of hers being shot right here in Topeka, right? And she's carrying this baby in her womb. And the only thing she could think about was, Mom, they're going to kill my baby. They're going to kill my son. They're going to take my son from me, right? And what I'm saying is this was a metaphor of something that was to come, because she had this feeling. Every part of her was at fight. Every part of her was afraid that her baby was going to be taken away from her at one point or another. And when we look at, and I said, did she have foresight? Because within this community, we have continued to lose. In this community, we have continued to grieve. In this community, we have continued to be traumatized by one thing happening after another. And so my question is, how do we mobilize? Because when we stood in city council and they said a select few, I remember that day and how it felt to the near DNA of me, how bad that felt. Right? For them to say a select few are the only ones that have questions, a select few are the only ones that care. And it's not a select few, it's a select few that's willing to go forward even when it hurts. It's a select few that is taking the time that they understand that this is a part of the call, right? And so my questioning is to you all, first off, we gotta move. That's not a question. Ain't, like my brother used to say, ain't no question. We gotta move. But my thing is, how many are sitting in this community and thinking they're untouchable, but keep finding out that their friends, their children's friends are being killed, right? Their ex had just got killed. Their future, the one that they thought may be their future, just got killed. The co-worker just got killed, or somebody that the co-worker knew got killed, right? How long are you going to keep allowing this to happen? How long are you going to walk into ministry? Come on, because I'll talk about truth. How long you going to walk and sit in the pew, and you're going to sit there and act like because you sit there that something can be changed, when we come from a legacy of ministries that understood what it was to get on the move? How long? How long? Because this one body can't do it all. And I'm not on a rant, but reality. I have men who say to me, you need to rest. I have men to say to me, stop trying to be the man, stop trying to control it. But when you gonna move?
I think, there are a lot of variables there. I think it is possible, right? I mean, we've seen it happen throughout the country. It's just figuring out. My hope is that it can be prompted by us, by folks who are willing to kind of step out there, versus it being prompted by just enough devastation that folks emotionally connect to it and step out there. But you also got to consider what you're looking at is what do I have to gain down the road? Because a movement it's a long span of time, and a lot of that change has been seen for years. So what do I have to gain by putting myself at risk, right? What do I have to gain today, which is not a lot? That change is going to come down the road, versus what do I have to lose today? And for a lot of folks, that's everything. Your freedom, or your life, especially. And we are talking about, I mean, you think about the subject of this conversation, it is about the damage that happens to Black bodies. And so it's, maybe this little that I have right now is good enough that I can sit in this and take my chances and not step out there and try to affect change for tomorrow. I've banged my head against the wall. Honestly, Dr. Regina, I've thought about this long and hard for many days. I've lost sleep over this idea, this question of how do we engage our people? How do we get them out there? I think we probably should be in those neighborhoods, in the communities with our people, having those conversations daily, kind of just old school grassroots door knocking, providing information, trying to educate folks what's going on, and also in its own way providing a pep talk, and also folks can identify, okay, these are the folks who will step out there, and igniting that, and they'll step out there with you. But I think we do probably have to be work harder at being in those areas where our people are at.
I mean, there's agreeing with Cortland, but also factoring in that there's barriers that there's nothing we're going to be able to do anything about unless we have the means to financially change some things, because like there's some folks that, I mean, for lack of better description, that just don't have their house clean and would love to show up and have so much to say, but they just don't want to make things worse for them or actually become a target because things are already hard enough. They don't have the privilege to they don't have the privilege, period. Like, I mean, when it's grind day to day, and then on top of that, you're a person of color living in a city, abiding by rules and regulations that are not made for you. They're not designed to protect and serve you. I mean, we're at a lose-lose, and to convince someone to come out of the dark and to come out of the shadows and to stand in the light and to face that's asking a lot of the community.
I think it's asking a lot for Black and brown bodies that have had harm put on them emotionally and physically for a very long time, right? And I think there's a lot of narrative that has happened in the last couple of years that allows white people to feel just a certain level of discomfort without urging action. So that there's been a well-played narrative that there's a level of being uncomfortable that makes it where you're doing something, and that your job is to get to be uncomfortable and then provide space, right? And those are the narratives that are pushed over and over again. It's just the ones that make people comfortable with feeling uncomfortable, right? So the books and the stories and the articles that allow white people to learn and grow, but just enough until they just stop, right? And honestly, the problem is that we have too many people who feel a level of privilege in our community because things don't affect them, or because of a job they have, or because of a circle they're in, that don't speak truth. And they don't put their bodies in front, and they don't say words that need to happen, because Topeka is the smallest big town. And just as much as you go from one job to another, people don't have the courage to put some of those sacrifices on their privilege, and that's the problem.
So I want to, and Danielle, I'm sorry, but as you were speaking, as Cortland was speaking as well, Cortland, I've been at a level of chaos internally like no other, right? Because it's very hard to report to a workplace every day and have your ear to the street too, right? And be able to step in the gaps and be there in spaces is very hard. To try to do a thing by, first off, I shouldn't be doing it by myself, nor should you, nor need no one on this line. This is not a movement that can take place alone. But it's like, what are you willing to sacrifice, right? For history, for this community, for your children, right? What are you willing to sacrifice? So people ask me the question of why are you trying to go all the way over to the UK? What is it about the UK that you need to know about? And the thing is, that was reaffirmed for me as I set foot in the UK, is that this is not just an American problem. This is not just a Topekan problem. But each area is working so hard to claim what they're doing good in their area, right? But we're doing this good, and we're doing this, stroking their own ego while they're destroying their people. Stroking their own ego while they're destroying their people. And so what I kept going is like, so I'm on this plane and I'm riding home, like flying, right? I'm sitting in this seat in between two white body individuals, understanding that I'm a part of this, but I can't do all this while I'm sitting in between these two people. And I'm understanding as well that I got to get comfortable being uncomfortable. I'm not going to be comfortable in this movement. And then I begin to question, like, can you still go in every day? And Regina, what point do you got to get to where you don't go in every day and clock in, but you hit the streets be your clock in? What point can you get to? And what level of stress or what network connections in the community do you need to be able to do the work where you allow young people to build positive racial identities? Right now, every single time a young man or a young woman sees another Black body get hit, how can they value and love themselves? We're in a fight of our lives, but we're not seeing that we're in the fight of our lives because we're fighting to maintain this good name. And is it really good? Because while one side of the city seen that the grass was green and the houses were beautiful and they had a bathroom to themselves, and and I grew up where cops were driving through parks on high-speed chases where kids were in parks at, where houses were being brought, where cops were being shot at. Not only were people being shot at, but the cop is a human being too. And I'm going, and I come home right back to, it seems like the same system that is broken. The same system that is broken, that has not changed. And I step foot in the UK and hear some of the same things happening. I set foot in the UK and have a white gentleman while I'm at this renowned spot that people go to, and a white gentleman has the audacity to approach. There was one white body woman with us and the rest were Black body women, to approach us and asked us if we were sex workers. He didn't ask us in hiding. It wasn't in hiding. He did this disgrace publicly. He did it out loud. There were a group of men that were sitting in there. There were a group of men occupying different ages, different spaces of there. And so what I'm saying to you is, when these bodies are falling, there are people who are sitting there. There are people who are sitting there. There are people who are taking messaging from there and saying, well, they shouldn't have did this, or if they wouldn't have been here, or if they wouldn't have been there. Straighten up your messaging. That was a human being. That was a man. That was a father. That was a son. That was a brother. That was a community member. And your mouth is moving. Not one voice opened. Not one voice came out and expounded to say, these are women. These are women. These are not animals. These are not another activity for you or another moment for you. These are women. And your word just beat them up. And those bodies, as that man was being shot at in downtown Topeka, and people were inside their jobs, they seen a man. And that is going to be entrapped in their memory, that a man was shot down publicly. And again, how do we move forward? We have 50,000 churches in the city of Topeka, and I'm exaggerating, right? Come on, we got small businesses in the city of Topeka, right? We got restaurants everywhere in the city of Topeka. We got liquor stores everywhere in the city of Topeka. All these are owned by somebody or connected to somebody. When we gonna get one of them bodies to come out and take a stance with us and move forward? It can't be everybody.
God forbid, but it seems like folks only initially step up when it's at their front door, because then they have no choice. Or if it hits close to home, which I don't wish upon anyone, but it needs to be more than that to bring them to the table. I guess what I'm saying is we need to try to figure out a way that it doesn't take a negative result for them to actually step up or find the courage to step up and then even then.
So speak on the negative result.
Hold
on, PJ. Tell me about the negative result, because historically, when we think about the move that had to take place, and I'm not saying I can go do it all, but historically, when we think about major movements taking place, not only historically, modern day heroes, when we think about the move that had to take place, somebody had to be willing to sacrifice. And I'm not telling nobody to die, right? But I think there's a strategic way for us to move this. And I know we've done conversation, right? We've talked till we blue in the face. I got on all this red. But we've talked till we've been blue in the face. We've done media outlets. We've walked into buildings in hiding. We came up with documentation that, I mean, the numbers of educated people that sat down and came up with plans. Somebody talk to me, because I told y'all, and I've spoken to each one of y'all.
I'm just going to circle back to it. I mean, and at this point, it just could be, I'm not going to say it's a last resort, because I feel like maybe it's something that could have been done in the beginning. But when you look at the civil rights movement, how that was organized, that was churches that were doing a lot of that work. But what they were also doing was their communities were a little bit more tight knit. I don't know another way to explain that. But so those conversations were household conversations. This is things they talked about over dinner, and it seems like now there's a disconnect. And so perhaps we have to find a way to bridge that gap. And again, going into the community, if you and I think that Regina, we talked about it earlier today. If you took a couple days a week and a handful of people, you could be impactful. At least getting the message out and letting folks, it's going to do two things. You're going to be able to give them the information and maybe enlighten them some things statistically that they are not thinking about, but also show some solidarity and let folks know that we're here for you and that we want to go this direction, but we can't do it without your support. The only time that a lot of folks do that type of work in any of the neighborhoods is when they're trying to get elected to office. And quite frankly, this isn't a matter of trying to get elected to office. This is a matter of trying to save our lives. And if you can make that connection in the community with the people, and then it's just basic organizing, get your spreadsheet ready, get your names and your phone numbers and a contact list, and keep people informed. It's okay, this is what we're doing now. This is what we're doing next week. And try to get some feedback. And by doing so, maybe you can properly engage our people out here and bring them, kind of bring them in closer to this movement and help push it forward.
So I've heard, one, we got to know the data. We got to know the data of what's happening in our community. Some of us only know what's happening on news.
I don't.
Come on.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
No.
I didn't mean to cut you off, but like, we got the data. The data's there. That's what's been just outrageous to me throughout this whole process. Is the data is there. These aren't random numbers. This isn't stuff that's hard to find. It's not like you're trying to answer what is the key to life or anything profound like that. These are hardcore numbers. So, can you hear me? Okay, so the data is great because the data proves what we already know. Black folks don't need the data to understand a life that we actually live. And I said that to you earlier. There's this thing that is happening where you say Black Lives Matter, and from people sitting in the council and in these political seats, what they do is they look at you and they say, yes, your life matters. So I guess it has to be the data that don't matter, right? Woo! So I matter because you told me that I matter. I mean, that sounds an awful lot like what was happening a long time ago before we had the freedoms that we enjoy now. Was you're okay because I'm going to tell you you're okay, but we over here getting beaten, flogged, and beat down and sold and all these things, but you're telling me I'm okay, so I'm okay. So the data should be to pull our people in, but also understand that the data alone ain't going to get us nowhere because the data don't matter. If I matter, I guess it's the data that don't. Yes, getting in the community and sharing. I think it's like you've lived this life experience and you know it ain't right. But presenting the data to say what you're feeling is it has actually, there's actually numbers that support it. You're not wrong. There's a lot of gaslighting that goes on. There's a lot of brothers out here who's like, I probably did this to myself. Nah, bro.
You didn't.
So presenting the data is good, and the data is mind blowing. You know, you don't have to be an astrophysicist to look at these numbers and say this is bad. So the data to us is great, but it's going to take more than the data, because we've been pushing data. Everybody's pushing the data. The data don't matter, right?
I agree with you, Cortland, but I'd like to add that there's still a large amount of folks in this community that have no clue of the data.
Yeah, our people. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. We bring them the data, right? The data matters to them because they understand that something ain't right, and you show it to them in black and white. You're right. Here's the numbers. What I'm saying is, to the powers that be, the folks who could have brought forth change, the folks who could have changed the rules and changed the game and actually made a difference, made our lives a little healthier, you know, put us on a level playing field, the data must not matter to them. All I'm saying is that, to me, is what's mind-boggling about the whole situation. But presenting the data, and Danielle's done an excellent job at collecting data and presenting data. I mean, steadfast, no quit, in your face, here are the numbers. And if you don't understand these numbers, well, let me show you these numbers. And apparently that data don't matter to the people who can actually make the change. So,
well, real fast. And so you say it don't matter to the people that can actually make the change. But I say the thing too, does the data matter to those within the community who see it happening? Because they're seeing the pain happening. I have people with implicit biases, and I maybe I shouldn't even use that word, but are expecting their kids to be able to repeatedly go through the same pain that they went through. And somehow they think they're going to thrive, but what they don't understand is your children are carrying that brokenness that you carry on top of the brokenness that they're receiving right now today. And so if you had to fight your way through, remember that your children are carrying that in their DNA.
But
so they already started with a clutch.
But the problem is, though, Regina, with that is that's the norm for you, right? So when that's the life you have lived, when you are living where every day is a worry, a struggle for generation, it's what happened when you were growing up, it's what happens with your aunts and uncles, it's what's happening within your personal community, right? Then it's the norm. So the idea of thinking something outside of that is actually more possible, or actually what truth is, that's not how any of us really live, right? Like and that's the problem on the side of people with privilege, right? It's the same problem, just the opposite view. They're living in a circle where they don't see people in harm. They don't see the damage that is being done because that circle that their life lives isn't broad enough, right? Just because that's how our lifestyles work. So on both extremes, until that circle has been broken, until we start infiltrating communities to then broaden that circle and what that looks like, and showing them that here is what's happening outside of this, and you're either a part of this much bigger picture that you're also seeing, or you're a part of a much bigger picture that you need to be seen. And that's human nature. And so we have to then make that circle bigger so that those things make sense beyond what's happening in your own realm, right? Because for every family, every culture, every community, every entity of that sort, your circle is what the norm is.
So it's time we shake the norm. And so for those that tap in at any point or are connected to each of us, I've watched who's connected to us do a lot of shaking of the norm. But my question is, what has become normal to you that you need to let go of? What has become normal to you? And I don't want, us here, It's not a question that we answer it here, but for some of us, some that are listening in, what has become normal to you that you need to shake? Because it shouldn't be normal that when I pass my black sister or my black brother that I'm not embracing them. I'm not seeing them. That should never become normal. It should not be normal that I go into an environment and I'm working, and because I'm the only black body in the environment, I begin to isolate myself. That should not be normal. It should never be normal. And I know there are some people, and I've had conversations with people that are in the city of Topeka that are black body individuals who are in higher level positions and who are hiding themselves or watching or tiptoeing around or eggshelling around. That should not be the normal. And it was a question asked to me. Is it okay that we tell them how they got to speak? I'm not trying to stop nobody from speaking their truth. Cortland heard me when we spoke. Say what you got to say. It is time out for us minimizing what needs to be said. Brothers, say what you got to say. Sisters, say what you got to say. You don't have to hold this in your body no more. Say what you got to say. If you want to break down crying, lately, I'm going to tell y'all, a sister and broke down crying, and I don't even care no more. Like, just get you a Kleenex or whatever you need to wipe my tears up off you, because I'm going in this season. It hurts. The bodies falling are hurting. To have to hide and isolate or minimize myself and operate like a puppet, it hurts. And I'm going to tell y'all, I'm a hard person to simulate into your system. But it's times that I question and ask, am I taking the right approach to do the work? So I'm going to go back to this. One of the things, like Cortland said, we know the data. Now it's time, since we know the data, now we got to know the what. What do we need to do, right? What do we need to do? We need to move. We got to move. Now, how are we going to move? We have discussed that we would move going into the communities, meeting the people where they are. One part is they got to understand that their voice is power. But the only way they're going to understand that their voice is power is that they understand how to infiltrate these that are in governing positions. And so we got the know-how to go in and do that. The other part is we need the numbers. So whoever you are, wherever you are, we need you. Your body, your voice is valuable. We have already been told that the limited voices are not what they want to see. We need you. We need you to show up on virtually. We need you to show up in person. And not that we just need you to show up there. We need you to speak. Come on.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I feel like that's bullshit, because just because we don't have a slew of folks, like, where are the army of people that's showing up to saying that they want this? Like, this is good. Where's the army of the whole community of people patting the city on the back saying this is a good idea, that they're doing a good job?
Well,
they're not falling in there like that.
I get that, PJ, but we know we're dealing with a colonized system. We know we're dealing with a colonized system. I'm saying it out loud. Topeka operates on a colonized system. We operate on a broken system. We operate on an old, I was about to say ass, but I just said it, system. We do. A good old boy system. We do. Guess what? The reason we operate on that system is because people ain't showing up and voting. The reason we operate on that system, not only because people are not showing up voting, because people ain't showing up speaking. They're not. They're sitting at home and they talking to the homeboy about it and the homegirl about it, but they ain't showing up. They hiding behind screens. So those are truths. So we know that part. But for us to shake a system that has already been established, we have to reaffirm what the new system is going to be, and we have to come with it. We can't hide behind nobody else. We got to come with it. So if we're going to go and introduce a new system, we got to have it formulated, and we got to have the numbers in place where people are moving and voices are short. Not that you show up on tomorrow and then the next day you talking about, girl, I'm done. We did that yesterday. No, the movement doesn't happen within a day. It's a monumental movement that's continuous. It has to be a fluent flow. It has to be, we have to align on the same frequency. And if the only frequency we can align on is that I don't want my children or my children's children to have to go through this, that means we got to move today so that we can stop it from happening tomorrow. Because it may not happen on our time, Jay. It may not happen on our time.
When
it may be that a Mona and a Naomi and a Nehemiah. Cortland, talk to me.
No, that statement when they said that, you know, from their point of view, this was just a few concerned citizens. They didn't really even look at that. They already knew that's what they were going to say. They used that that was their narrative. It's just a few concerned citizens. They know damn well that we were simply speaking to what our community feels, what our community experiences. We were explaining that trauma, that sense of hurt, that sense of neglect, that sense of being, sorry, I ain't gonna drop that word, that sense of being invisible. We were expressing that on behalf of our community, on the behalf of the people we love, our brothers, our sisters, aunts, and uncles. But that was to minimize it. It's just a few concerned citizens. Really, if you look at it, then that's saying that each person who sits in a city council seat and is speaking on behalf of their constituents, what their constituents want, is not real, because it's just a group of people, a group of council people speaking or just speaking, and not carrying any weight. So they do for a living. Every time they have those meetings, all that work that they're doing is speaking on behalf of what's being shared with them. But when we did the exact same thing, it's minimized. You're only connecting it to the faces that are speaking. That is something they took from us. They know that it wasn't just a few concerned citizens. They see the problems. That's a way of minimizing it, because they knew from the onset what they were going to do. So we could have 300, unless we're going to have 300. Is that what we need to do? We need to have 300 people stand up and speak.
We did, Cortland, and they canceled the meeting and did nothing for over a year, and then doubled back and made no suggestions or changes or anything. We showed over 300,
and we had over 1,800 emails on our Action Network that went through demanding change happen after Christopher Kelly was killed. 1,800 and something. And they're sick of form letters, or chain letters, as some of them like to call it, because it's a way to amplify voices and mobilize voices quickly, and that's annoying to them. And so you're right. I mean, you're right.
Yeah, so if you're listening in, hold on. So if you're listening in, what you're seeing is it's been a play back and forth. Regardless of what move we're making, there's a fight back. There's a fight back. And so that's why the call out is for you to stand up and for you to step forward. Because if you come and you connect as well, the power, the unity will be the power that will be able to break up these shackles. Because the work, it's not that the work is not getting done. It's not that they're not being addressed. It's not that we have not given chance after chance, or attempt after attempt. It's not that we have not come up and tried to use different ways to make this happen. And so if you're hearing me and you're remaining in the house and you're remaining in isolation, why? If you really want change to happen, why are you doing it the same way? Contact us.
Regina, I did put the next petition in the chat on Facebook, where people can add their name to the press release calling on the city to start a Department of Justice audit. So that link is in this chat on Facebook, and we'll be sending that out more. It's one more way to do an action, and one more step that you can take.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Regina.
No, I just was going to say, to have someone come from the outside, think about this, you all. You know what you've been doing, and you know how to do things the way you've always done them. But the only way you grow is when you connect to someone that can see the potential in you. You can connect to someone that can see the brokenness in you. I don't go to the doctor because the doctor see the same thing I see. I go to the doctor because the doctor can see something beyond what I can see. The doctor knows how to test me. The doctor knows how to pour things out. The doctor knows what to prescribe me. And so we're in a broken system, right? And as Miss Melanie said it earlier, it's not that the system is broken, the system is working how it was intended to work. But if we're going to align for a nowadays city, a city that's able to speak to what the community is needing nowadays, not yesterday, but nowadays, we got to have someone that has external eyes be able to look in and see what is needed for change to happen. And change to happen in a way where everybody can be seen, heard, and valued.
Just maybe Danielle, can you kind of break down what that process, because that's the push, right? That's what we need to happen. That's the ask.
Come on, Crowley.
Is to bring folks in, the Department of Justice in to do an audit. Can you kind of break that down for us? Start from the beginning, like how do you make that happen? Who has the power to make it happen? And then kind of follow that up with our part in that, our part in forcing those folks to make that happen.
Right. Yeah. So currently, when situations occur in the police department, like an officer-involved shooting, an external entity is brought in to review that process and make sure that policies and procedures are met within those bounds. Oftentimes, though, those are done by either potentially even just the sheriff's office, but in the last couple situations, it has been the KBI. But that is the Kansas Bureau of Investigation, the branch of the FBI here in Kansas that is housed, very locally, and there is a lot of closeness and overlap. We have been shifting and moving to more policies or more trainings to be done and conducted internally by internal people as well. So we're having less and less involvement from external sources, kind of watching over how things are. This isn't an abnormal thing either. Many of us who have worked in any entity in the healthcare field and the education, whatever it may be, having a national entity audit your work is not only often required, but it's usually very welcomed because a new, fresh set of eyes being able to kind of review things. I mean, it would be troubling if that were a workplace where we were having lots of injuries or policies that were requiring people to have to be on leave because of what the occurrence of that incident is. Why are police officers not prepared to manage these situations properly? All of the above. And while we're getting a fresh set of eyes is necessary to mitigate further deaths. And so the city would have more leverage of requesting the Department of Justice come in and look at how these policies and procedures are set up, how the trainings are going, and if really, in fact, these are set up in a way to be safe. So we're asking the city to push for that because they have that leverage. But we're going to keep moving forward. So an additional link that I will send out later, you can go to the Department of Justice website and file a complaint yourself. You can file a complaint stating that you feel that these practices are police misconduct and that they should be investigated. And so I would rather the route come from the city and be something that is helpful, that is not coming from a place of, such blame, whereas going on and individuals filing misconduct reports is a much different practice than stating that, we need to figure out where the mishap is coming, where's the disconnect. That's a much different process. And right now the city hasn't hasn't begun that self-evaluation, which is really disappointing. So we can individually do that, where the entity, the Department of Justice, which is separate from the FBI branch, they have their own unit that investigates and just really takes a good look to make sure things are really in alignment to be safe. So those links right now, the bit.ly there is a petition that you can add your name onto. We have had many organizations who have jumped on board and stated that they feel this is necessary. And we're going to start adding all the individual voices as well. And we're going to keep showing our voices, our power. And we can do so by continuously putting those names up and sending them to council, and continuously making those DOJ complaints ourselves.
All right. So, question, Cortland and PJ, do you have any last minute words?
At this point, I mean, if there's any other option, I strongly suggest that, I mean, you call a neighbor, you call a brother, you call a cousin, you call a friend. If you can avoid calling the police, I think that's going to be safer at this point until further notice, because since as long as I've been alive, it's just, there's no good results from calling an officer out to the scene. My car, for example, my car has been stolen, and I have yet to figure out how I'm going to make a police report, because I'm not calling them, and I really don't want to go back up to that police department. I may end up just taking a loss. Because I'm definitely not calling them over here.
Yeah, no, I get it. I get it. You know, the idea of calling police on a person of color is dangerous. You know, it's you know, it could be just to settle a small dispute. And maybe that small dispute ends up being settled with somebody dead because they didn't act or react the way that they should have acted or reacted in that given situation, which led to an escalation, not on their part, but on the part of whoever sent over there to keep the peace. I think I'm sorry, Regina. I was kind of taken back. That was a stone cold reality check there, brother. Stone cold reality check. What were you asking, Regina? Just a closing statement. What's on my mind?
Yeah.
What's on my mind is, I think, and I felt this way for a while, but I'm just going to vocalize it now. It might be time to turn up a little bit. I know that, you know, I have folks around me who get it, they understand it, they see it, they feel it, but you know, showing up to hold a sign is just not really on the top of the list of things to do, and perhaps in moving forward, not allowing external forces to dictate how we do and do not show up, I think is important. And again, I'm just going to go back to being in the community, and you know, for multiple reasons, to spread the information, to spread the message, so folks get it, and also to kind of love on our people and console our people a little bit, because I think everybody's going through it right now.
Thank you all. Danielle, do you have any to add?
I talk enough. I do. And thank you, Regina, for always providing the space to send these messages out. And you're a force. We love you.
Well, thank you for loving me. Thank you to everyone that logged in on tonight. What I need you to know is there is the link for you to sign on to the petition right there before you. Not only is there a link for you to sign on to the petition, there is online a continual conversation going on about how we can move forward and step out and do something together. As well, this is always a lean-in space for those who are open and willing to have a conversation. But I tell you now, we're in a season of taking a step towards change, a step towards healing. And for us first to heal, we got to get through this pain. We've maintained it. We've operated in it way too long. And I don't want another generation to be touched by something we allowed to be maintained. And so we have to speak up. Not only this, I need you to understand, if you are not registered to vote, tomorrow is the last day to get registered for this election coming up November the 8th. Not only that, don't just register, but make sure you're there by November 8th and you're voting. Your vote does matter. I understand what it seems like. I understand the lie that has been fed to you, but your vote matters. And for change to happen, you got to step forward. Thank you again for joining us. And I'll see you next time. Step into your rhythm, baby. Bye, y'all.